everybody? It's Bill here from BSing Sports. As Ryan and always, we're super excited to have you back. As per the course that we've run the last couple of weeks, we're going to stick with the Stanley Cup playoffs to start our night, and then we're going to move on to some other topics, baseball primarily, and then we have a college football discussion to have. But for starters, again, NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Ryan, what's the big things going on there?
Yeah, so the big thing for me tonight is Game 7 between the Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't think anybody saw this coming, honestly. Cam Talbot has pulled rabbits out of his goalie mask at times, and he shut out Vegas at least twice. It may have even been 3 times. I don't remember what the score of the Wild's other win was, but I know they have a 1-0 win in overtime, and then the 3-0 win in Game 6 to force the Game 7. This is a surprise because Vegas on paper beats them all through and through, every position, every line, even the goalie matchup, nobody saw this coming. So that's the big thing for me. And that goes down tonight. So if you guys wanted to, well, it's Friday and obviously this won't be recorded till Sunday, but that's the big thing for me. So hopefully you guys get a chance to, watch a little bit of that game. Another big thing for me is that the Bruins beat the crap out of the Capitals. 4-1, I believe that series was. Yes, it was. And that for the Bruins being a lower seed than the Caps and in the same division, so they saw them 8 times. That was kind of a shock to me as well, that the Capitals got beat down so bad.
In addition to that, you and I talked about this last week, where we thought the Capitals were just deeper than the Bruins, and we thought the Capitals were going to come away with this one. We both thought it was going to go 7, but again, still a surprise that the Bruins just dominated the way they did.
Yeah, especially because people had the Bruins, like almost missing the playoffs, or some people even had the Bruins missing the playoffs to start the year. They'd lost to Dano Char and a couple other pieces. Torrey Krug went to St. Louis. So this was unexpected for sure. And speaking of St. Louis, they got swept under the doormat by, Colorado, which surprised a little bit, but with how injury, prone St. Louis was this year and going into the playoffs, I'm not entirely surprised. Colorado is the deepest team in the West, in my opinion. And I think they'll steamroll all the way through. I wouldn't be surprised if none of their series went more than 5 games, but time will tell.
One of the other series that we're in this one that isn't over. There's a game tonight. The Toronto Maple Leafs lead the Montreal Canadiens 3-2. We had that discussion last week where we thought with Tavares out that Montreal wasn't going to put up much of a fight. We were obviously wrong there. Tavares, however, was on the ice before Game 5. He was not expected. He didn't play. He was in a non-contact jersey, just practicing. And he's not expected to play for Game 6 either. But it's extremely promising for the team that Tavares is on the ice. They're hoping that he might be ready for Game 1 or Game 2 of the next series should they proceed.
Yeah, that's got to be a huge boost to the morale of the team, seeing a guy like, John Tavares, at least skate, especially after that nasty injury he took. And on top of that, he had a knee injury with it as well. So that's actually what's holding him out of the lineup for so long. So speedy recovery to John, and we'll see how that series pans out. But, Montreal stole another one in Game 5. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night when they play Game 6.
Yeah, the Canadiens took a Game 5 in overtime too. It was a really good game.
Yeah, another series that I want to talk about, obviously Penguins and Islanders. I'm so happy that the Islanders beat the Penguins. I'm so happy I'm not sitting here talking about how the Penguins have a chance to win the Cup. Sorry, Penguins fans, whoever's listening, but I don't like that team. Bill doesn't like that team.
Sorry.
Nobody likes that team, but that series kind of surprised me too, because the Penguins were up 2-1, and then the Islanders just kind of flicked a switch and went bye-bye.
Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of last year with the Islanders, how the Flyers took a 2-1 lead, and then that was the end of that.
Yeah, well, and then, the Flyers won every game in overtime. The Islanders don't make it easy on anybody, and that was a 4 seed beating a 1 seed. So there's a big upset there. Speaking of big upsets, Connor McDavid, widely considered the world's best hockey player, will be watching the second round from his couch again. The last 2 playoff series for the Oilers have not gone as planned. They are 1-7, leading to 2 losses, one against the 12 seed Blackhawks and another one against the 3 seed Jets. So they were the favorite in both series and they lost. What is the issue in Edmonton?
You and I had a text message chain that was going back and forth a little bit the other night, and you had this wonderful rant on how bad the Oilers were. So I think I'm just going to let you take this one.
Yeah, I don't get it. They have the 2 best scorers in the league, and I think that seems to be the issue. Depth kind of shines in the playoffs, and the Jets have a lot of depth on their roster, especially down the middle. Andrew Lowry, Andrew Kopp are the 3 and 4 centers. Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Kyle Connor. They have talent all over that lineup. Outside of their top pairing of defensemen, they're a little thin, but Connor Hellebuck's a stud goaltender, and he finally came around this series. I think the Oilers just lack the depth. In the regular season, you can get away with dominating so many bad teams, especially when you Draisaitl and McDavid out there skating circles around everybody.
Yeah.
But in the playoffs, it just doesn't work like that. So I think the Oilers need to get more depth. They just are so thin, and they can't continue to rely on their big guns over and over and over again. You're going to get burned, especially against the better teams.
Yeah. In addition to that, you're wasting their years. How many years they can be skating around people?
Yeah, no kidding.
The final series that went down. I'm sorry, stuttering here.
There's 2 more series we got to talk about.
Carolina
and Nashville.
Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll talk about Carolina and Nashville then. So Carolina beat the Predators in 6 games. Something funny happened this morning, actually. The Predators Twitter handle blocked Carolina's Twitter handle. I got a really good kick out of it. I thought it was funny.
Talk about a newborn rivalry. That's hurtful. I wonder how long that's going to last.
I hope at least until the start of next season. That'd be fun.
That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty funny.
Last game, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So the last series that went down was the Battle of the Floridians. The Florida Panthers lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. Tampa took it 4-2. However, something interesting happened before Game 6 in Amalie Arena. So there is a rule in Amalie Arena where in certain sections you are not allowed to wear opposing teams' jerseys. And an 11-year-old boy and his father were approached by security, and they were told to remove their jerseys because they were wearing Florida Panthers jerseys in an unapproved section. They were eventually, threatened to leave the stadium, and they didn't have to. But what do you make of that rule?
So in the document, you said the thing that happened in Tampa, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I didn't.
I wanted a genuine reaction, and that's why I typed it like that.
So I think that's a ridiculous rule. And the reason being is I don't know what sections they have blocked off. I don't know if they're good seats or they're bad seats, but if I'm paying money for a good ticket, so anyway, let's go to it real quick. I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan. If I go to Tampa, wearing my Phillies jersey and I pay to be on the home dugout, right off the dugout, I don't want them telling me that I can't be wearing my Phillies gear. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. If I pay my money, I should be able to wear whatever gear I want to get into the stadium. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, I think the fans should be compensated in some way.
Yeah, I think that too. Well, first off, I would really love to be compensated as a Florida Panthers fan because they got shut out for nothing. But secondly, yeah, I agree. That rule's ridiculous. And I can't believe that, that they even allow something like that. The state of Florida would allow something like that. And I know it's like a business, and as the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning, you're allowed to run your own team however you want. But at the same time, that's unacceptable. He's a paying customer of your business. He should be allowed to sport whatever jersey he so desires.
Out of curiosity,
again, I get that.
Out of curiosity, is this just like a playoff rule, or is this like?
I have no idea. So I've been to Amalie Arena 2 or 3 times. I went TDY to Florida a couple years ago, and we went to a few Lightning games. And my buddies who are big Lightning fans, they loaned me a Lightning jersey, but I was wearing my Flyers hat because I just couldn't, stand to wear a Lightning jersey and not sport my actual team. So I don't really know about that, but that's an interest. It's an interesting rule, and I had never heard of any sports team doing anything like that. And to me, it seems a little asinine and ridiculous. So good on Tampa for winning the series, but I can foresee a rule change coming very shortly if the fans decide that they want to take this to another level.
And I hope they do. Again, I really do. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. So speaking of hockey, the expansion draft is coming up. For those of you that don't know, the Seattle Krakens are born this year. And Bill, why don't you tell us how an expansion draft works? Why don't you tell us the rules of, how that goes down?
All right. So the basic rules, very quick rundown of them is Seattle must choose a minimum of 20 players under contract for the 2021-2022 regular season. And those with an aggregate expansion draft value that is between 60 to 100% based on what the NHL decides that score is. Current NHL teams get to protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie, or 8 total skaters in all. Basically, it's a way to ensure that unlike the NFL, it's a way to ensure that an expansion team comes in and they're actually competitive. You're not expected to wait 4 or 5 drafts to build your team. And take the Vegas Knights as a perfect example. 2 years in the league, they won the cup. I mean,
no, the first year in the league, they went to the cup final. They haven't won a cup yet, though.
I apologize. First year in the league,
best
go to
expansion,
the cup, but still, yeah.
Best start to an expansion franchise ever.
Yeah. So basically, the expansion draft for the NHL is to ensure that the new team is competitive. Ryan and I wanted to get into this a little bit and talk about, because again, we're Philly fans. You see, I got my G jersey on the wall here. Who we think the Flyers will protect or will leave unprotected, rather, like in big name senses. So you go first, and I'll give you the only 2 that I can think of.
So to start, I believe that the method the Flyers are going to use, I think they're going to go 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and the 1 goalie, obviously, as you have to in both scenarios. I believe this because they're definitely deeper on the forward side than they are the defense side. They could afford to lose a couple defensemen and nobody would bat an eye at it. As far as who I think the 7 forwards are going to be, I'm going to leave a couple surprise names like out there. So for those of you that don't know, Claude Giroux and Kevin Hayes both have no movement clauses in their contract, which means they have to be protected. So that takes out 2 slots altogether. Now you add Sean Couturier in there, who's a lock to be protected. Joel Farabee is a lock to be protected. Travis Konechny is another one that is probably a lock to be protected, although I wouldn't even care if he wasn't. Jake Voracek is another one that's a lock to be protected. And obviously Scott Lawton's going to get protected too, because they just signed him to a 5-year deal with a relatively cheap average cap hit at $3 million a season. So I think that's 7, right? I named off 7 or 6.
6.
Okay. And the last forward that I have them protecting is Jake Voracek. So that does leave James Van Riemsdyk out there. Again, like I said, if they wanted to go the other way and not protect Travis Konechny, I wouldn't be surprised. If they wanted to protect somebody else, guys like Wade Allison and dudes that made, slight appearances at the end of the season, they are not draft eligible because they're still under 2-way contracts, so they can be sent to the AHL. However, yeah, so that leaves I could see 3 big names being left off the list in the form of Travis Konechny, James Van Riemsdyk, and Jake Voracek. I think James Van Riemsdyk's the most likely, and then another one on the back end is Shane Gostisbehere. Shane Gostisbehere could definitely be left unprotected because I think the 3 defensemen that will get protected are Sanheim, Phil Myers, and obviously Ivan Provorov.
Okay, so you and I thought the same thing there. I also believe Ghost isn't getting protected. They're obviously going to protect Carter Hart as the goalie.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that. They're obviously going to protect Carter
because they're keeping it. Yeah. So I was actually more leaning towards JVR being left off the hold list. Only because I know JVR had a history here prior, but Jake's been here the whole time, and this is kind of what the Flyers do: is they're always overly loyal to their team, like the guys who have been here, almost to a fault. Wayne Simmons is playing decent hockey right now, but he had long since been past his prime, and we held on to him for 4 additional years before finally trading him. It's just one example that I can think of off the top of my head, but all Philadelphia organizations seem to have that fault where they're loyal to a fault. So I think that while one or the other wouldn't really affect me in any kind of negative way, I think JVR is the one that isn't kept. And then a name that, and I mentioned this right before we got on, I'm not as well versed on the Flyers roster as you are. Another name that we both left off there was Nolan Patrick. I know he's got an injury history, so I'm not even sure if he's eligible to be held or sent out.
I think he's on a 1-way contract, so he should be, have to be protected if they're going to protect him.
Well, the issue with that is you have to have played at least 70 games in the last 2 seasons. Now, with the COVID restrictions and his injuries, he may not even be on the list to be taken. So the Flyers, if they're still happy with Nolan Patrick, might get an easy keep and hope that he comes back next season and is good to go.
So I wonder. I know I've read the same rules that you have off NHL.com. I wonder if that means that they have to use a protection slot on him
So it
and
did.
not
It
that he's
didn't
just
say
like a
that.
freebie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
I went into depth reading it to make sure that I was prepared for this, and it doesn't say that they have to use a slot. They're not. So if they don't qualify for the 60 to 100% rating from the NHL, including that injury span there, it doesn't say that they have to use a hold slot for them or a keep slot for them.
they should rate Nolan Patrick on his minus 30 on a scale of 1 to 100.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so like I have pretty much the same guys as you. I was just a little more leaning towards them keeping Jake than Jake.
So if they do have to protect, if they can, or if they would have to protect Nolan Patrick to avoid losing him, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's a guarantee that he doesn't get protected. I think they'd rather take the chance on a 22-year-old Nolan Patrick than
a 33-year-old Jacob Voracek, and I agree.
Or JVR or Travis Connect. I mean, Travis Connect is still young, so I think he's the most unlikely of the three big names that I mentioned to get unprotected. But yeah, I think Jake is on the list. I don't think, and again, I've mentioned before, Jake is a great playmaker, a guy who who can make all the passes. However, he's just out of place here. And he's taken up a huge cap hit. And for those of you that don't know, in the NHL, I think I touched on this last week, there's a minimum salary cap that each team has to make because you have to stay competitive. So it would not surprise me if JVR, Ghost, or Jake were taken because the Seattle Krakens are going to have to meet that cap minimum. And all three of those players have huge cap hits next year.
Yeah. I 100%. I'm with you.
How many different teams are gonna give up players that have a cap hit of $4.5 million or more? How many other teams do you think have players that are like, we paid that guy way too much?
Yeah, probably not many.
Yeah, so if Patrick has to be protected, I wouldn't be surprised if that left JVR in the dust, or not JVR, excuse me, Jake Voracek in the dust. Moving on.
Yeah, I mean, real quick before we move on, like I said, it wouldn't it's not affecting me in any negative way to see them go. I mean, Konechny, I guess, like you said, I'd rather take a chance on, but the other two guys, okay.
Yeah, so I think there's 5 locks for forwards, and that's why it also makes it hard to do the 8 skaters. Lawton, Couturier, obviously Giroux and Hayes, and then Farabee. I think those are the only 5 locks. I think everybody else is up for grabs.
Yeah. Fortunately, they only get to take one, right?
Yeah.
No, I meant that take a couple more.
Yeah. Go ahead and take Ghost, JVR, and Jake. We'll free $15 million in cap space, and then we'll tell Dougie Hamilton he can have 10.
Well, there you go. Sorry, go ahead. Continue. Moving on here.
Yeah, so we're moving on to baseball, and we're just gonna do some generic talk here. Quarter into the season, pretty much. Going to review. We talked about it a little bit last week, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth, more so on the players' side than the team side. I got a couple, young stars that I want to point out. A player that I want to point out had a milestone. So first, I do want to mention. Did you see that the Javier Baez base run? Oh, how are you a major league first baseman and you let that happen? You have got to be kidding me.
So those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, And I bring this up because I saw something on Facebook earlier where Javier Baez is running down the first baseline and there's a spell to disarm your opponent, and it's called Stupefy. In Harry Potter, I know I'm nerding out right now as if our sports podcast wasn't enough. So it says it's Javier Baez casting Stupefy on the first baseman and then the runner scores. But wow. I was watching that. I had to watch it 3 times to make sure I saw everything that happened. Okay, so first of all, Javi never left the line on first baseline, so technically he was never out.
Yeah. So
secondly, as the first baseman, tag the bag and throw the ball home.
Yeah. So let's break down the scenario here for a second. So there is a runner on second, and Javier Baez from the Cubs is at the plate, and they're playing the Pirates. Javier Baez hits a sharp ground ball to the third baseman who's playing back. I don't remember how many outs there were, so I'm going to assume there were 2, and that's why he was playing back so far. But the throw was kind of down the first baseline a little bit. Javier Baez would have been well out. It was more towards, the home plate side of first base. So instead of turning around or, even walking backwards and tagging the base, the first baseman caught the ball and then proceeded to chase Javier Baez as he walked toward home plate, which is smart on Javier Baez's part. I'm not saying he did anything wrong. That's smart baseball.
Yeah.
And then the first baseman, while locked his attention on Javier Baez, the runner from second, who had then made it to third on the throw, proceeded to dart home. And he scored underneath the tag of the catcher. And as soon as the first baseman got rid of the ball, with being 3 feet away from Javier Baez and 4 feet away from the catcher, Baez took off to first base because nobody was there. Nobody was covering the bag. And then as the catcher misses the tag on the guy going home, he then proceeds to throw the ball into right field, trying to get Javi at first, who then makes it to second on another wild throw, which fortunately somebody played Little League baseball and learned how to back up the throw. So Javier Baez hit a sharp ground ball to the third baseman and traded places with his runner at second base.
It's funny that you mentioned the somebody who played Little League baseball thing, because that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like a bunch of T-ballers out there just running around with a baseball, and like one slightly older kid who knew he could run home and run to first. Like
how on earth are you in the major leagues as a first baseman and do not walk 3 feet backwards with the ball in your hand and tag the base?
I'm not even sure it was 3 feet, man. It was
it might have even been closer than that. How? And I said this to a buddy when we were talking about the play. I was like, I guess, there's a reason that the Pirates will be drafted #1 overall next month, because they sure as heck look like it. Yeah, I don't think Jack Leader or Kumar Rocker or whoever is on, whoever they're going to draft is going to, save that team. By the way, we'll touch a little bit more on the MLB draft next weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was absolutely a disgrace. That was the worst showing of baseball I've ever seen, especially if there was 2 outs. Again, I don't remember how many outs were in the scenario, but it just gets exponentially worse if there were 2 outs. It's totally ridiculous.
Sorry, I'm still laughing at it because I'm
I don't get it. Bill, why don't you go ahead and tell us about a couple of players who've caught your eye this season?
All right, so I got 2, and it's 2 people I've talked about several times in our podcast in the previous weeks. And look, the first one I get, he's actually in his 5th year, but it's not his full 5th year because he was sick and he's going to win comeback player of the year. Trey Mancini is still early in his career at 29 years old. I mean, if you think about guys that are still playing in 38, 39, he's still and producing. He could very potentially be one of those guys. So I'm looking at it as an early career individual for Trey Mancini. He's hitting 278 with 11 home runs. He's walked 20 times as well. 42 RBIs. He's one of the very, 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 very few bright spots on the Orioles.
Him and John Means, that's it, because Mountcastle hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
Adley Rutschman's not up yet. So
just based on his production alone at the plate, it's surprising to me that he's got 42 RBIs, because like you said, like the only other person in the lineup isn't doing anything. So I'm surprised he's got 42 RBIs. But like I said, 11 home runs, 278. He's really impressed me with the way he's come back, especially since you never know how you're going to come back from cancer, man. I've said it before. I'll say it again. You've agreed with me. He's going to win comeback player of the year. He deserves, especially if he produces like this, he deserves to win comeback player of the year. You're talking he's on pace to hit 44 home runs this season. Like, go get it, kid. Let's do this.
Yeah, honestly, I think at this point, like if he were to not have a single at bat the rest of the season, he would get it. Like 42 RBIs at this point is, not terrible. And 42 RBIs for a guy coming off of cancer is, amazing.
42 RBIs for a guy coming off of cancer, which is amazing on a team that is the Orioles.
Yeah, and they're terrible. As we predicted, they're terrible.
You want to give me your first? You want to give me one before I give you my second one? Or you want me to keep going?
Let me do one real quick. Speaking of milestones, Shane Bieber is the first pitcher in the majors to reach 100 strikeouts with his 12 strikeout performance on Thursday night against the Tigers. So now his season total is actually at 110. And this is, everybody knew Shane Bieber was a strikeout pitcher. He can go get the K when he needs to. But this is mind blowing, because even when this episode goes, public on Sunday, it will still be the month of May, and he has 110 strikeouts. That's a lot of strikeouts in not a lot of time. And if you've watched some of his starts, he's got some really nasty stuff. What do you think the chances are he gets 350 strikeouts this year?
Man, I would love to see him get 350 strikeouts.
He's on pace for about 330, 340, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's not
so
unrealistic.
if he stays healthy, and he pitches every fifth day, I think he could probably get to 340. I don't think he gets to 350.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because
You're talking 10
especially
strikeouts for all 30 starts of the season. That's a lot of strikeouts for 30 starts.
Mathematically speaking, he'll probably have 33 starts. But
I hope he does. Look, I would love to see
maybe even more, because if the Indians, who are kind of surprised me with how good they've been so far to start the year, if they're in like playoff contention coming down the stretch, you can bet that Bieber is going to get more than every fifth day.
Yeah, just so you guys know, the Indians are 27-21, game and a half out on the White Sox. That wasn't one of the things that Ryan and I predicted.
Yeah, no, and it's early, so things can change. But I mean, they're playing really. They have great pitching. Zach Plesac, before he had that freak accident where he aggressively took off his shirt and broke his thumb, so he's out for an indefinite amount of time.
Was he playing Magic Mike or something? Like, what was going on there? Aggressively.
Yeah, I'm curious. Did he do that in the locker room for a show, or like was he at home? Like what was going on there? So I'm assuming that's one of those incidents. We won't get any details on, but. Yeah, so that's unfortunately he was pitching very well. They have, Cleveland's one of those teams where they just breed pitching. It's so weird. Like that. I mean, Corey Kluber started out there, Mike Clevenger, Shane Bieber. They have good pitching. Cliff Lee, yeah. So CC Sabathia started in Cleveland.
That's right, yeah.
So they got arms, and they're pitching like it, especially in a division that's kind of level. I think, except for the White Sox. I think the White Sox are a little bit better. They need to get a little bit healthier. And by the way, that was Shane Bieber's 600th career strikeout. He hasn't been around very long. I think he's only 25 years old. So,
attaboy, Biebs, good job. Probably don't like being called that. I apologize.
Everybody in Cleveland calls him that, so I don't think he has much of a choice. I was sitting in the crowd that game that I went to, and everybody's like, "Let's go, Biebs!" So I don't think. Well, I don't think he has a problem with it.
Like I said, I only have two on here. My second one is another person I talked about. He's my dark horse to win AL MVP. Shohei Otani in his fourth season, third full season, still young in his career. He's because he's a two-way player. Again, for those of you who don't know, two-way player is a guy who can pitch and then turn around and play in the field. He's pitching with a 125 whip, 237 ERA. He's got 45 strikeouts. He's only 1-0, but that's because the Angels have been extremely disappointing this season. And he's just shown out on the mound. And on top of that, he's second in the league in home runs with 15 home runs, behind Ronald Acuna Jr. And he's got, I'm looking it up on the computer right now, 38 RBIs and 6 stolen bases. The guy is literally doing it all. So another individual that's playing out of his mind. He's 26 years old for me, young in his career, Shohei Otani. And I'm 100% sure that as the season progresses, I'm going to talk about him every week or every other week, because he's just impressing the hell out of me with what he's doing out there. As a baseball fan, that's the kind of play I want to see.
Yeah, so the next two for me, I'll kind of combine them because they play for the same team. And these are guys that are very early with very small sample sizes. So hear me out on this. A guy that I've talked about, before with other people, and I've briefly mentioned him on this podcast before, Garrett Crochet. He's a relief pitcher right now for the White Sox. Big left-handed dude from Tennessee. The most recent of 23 players all time to make their MLB debut the same year that they were drafted, which, by the way, is a lot harder than it sounds because the MLB draft takes place halfway through the season. So this is a very small sample size. He has pitched 18 2/3 innings in his career. He has allowed exactly 1 earned run. That's nasty. This is a guy that from the left side can reach back and go get 101, serious wipeout slider. His changeup's a little underdeveloped, which is why they have him in the bullpen, I believe. Maybe they keep him there for his career, who knows? But this guy's actually allowed more unearned runs than earned runs. I think he's allowed 2 unearned runs. So his career ERA right now sits at a whopping 0.48. That earned run did come this season. So he's sitting at a 0.71 this year. So keep an eye out for Garrett Crochet, especially if he can make his way into the rotation. And obviously this pace is unsustainable, but he's like the Jacob deGrom of relief pitchers at the moment. So
it's a good nickname or good.
And another guy that plays for the White Sox that I want to talk about because he is a dead breed. He's like Latin, that nobody speaks that language anymore, and that's Nick Madrigal. So what's interesting about Nick Madrigal is in 277 career plate appearances, he has 17 strikeouts. He's on pace for 162 game season to strike out 39 times. That's not a lot.
Those are 20 win numbers.
Yeah. So what is even more mind-blowing about it is he's on pace to walk even less than that. So this guy's like the perfect old school number 2 hitter because when he swings the bat, the ball is going to be put in play.
Yeah.
This is a very aggressive hitter, and he's batting over 300, of course, and he'll be a career 300 hitter if he can keep this kind of mentality up. Generally, people that put the ball in play like that at that rate will have higher averages.
Yeah.
But that to me, that was just mind blowing when I looked at that, and actually the game that I went to in Chicago, he struck out twice. So I got to see 2 of his 17 strikeouts. I think that's an accomplishment for me.
Yeah. I do have one other honorable mention here, and it's based on the last 15 games alone, and he is a Philly. Our big country boy, Rhys Hoskins, in this last 15 games, Rhys Hoskins is hitting 353. The big man's got a stolen base. He's only struck out 11 times. He's got 12 RBIs and 3 home runs in the last 15 games.
On a team that is missing its best 3 bats.
Yes, so it's worth noting that Didi Gregorius, Bryce Harper, and JT Realmuto are all out of the lineup and have been for the last 2 weeks. In addition to that, the Phillies have managed to hang around the division lead. Now, I get it, the division's not super strong, but hanging around is extremely important. When you get your healthy guys back, you can make a run and take the division lead. They're only 2.5 back on the Mets right now. And I look forward to when Harper, Realmuto, and Gregorius come back. Hopefully they continue to pitch to Rhys because with those guys in the lineup, he's not he's not somebody I'm going to fear as much as JT or Bryce, especially. So hopefully these numbers continue. I know he had a slump in there where he was like 1 for 21 or something like that, and he struck out a bunch of times. But find a medium between that and this, you're okay, big fella. Keep going.
Yeah, no, and obviously that's another unsustainable pace, especially for somebody who's not a contact hitter. We just totally switched hitter types from Nick Madrigal to Rhys Hoskins. Madrigal has 1 career home run. Rhys Hoskins, had 1 home run yesterday. So this is an unpopular opinion, and I know it's not on our topics, but we can get to it anyway because I love baseball.
Yeah,
I like where the Phillies are at.
When you typed in there quarters into season review, I have a nice little section typed out for the Phillies specifically. And then we kind of brushed over it and I didn't go back to it, which was fine. But let me hear your take on it and then I'll give you mine.
I like where the Phillies are at. I like it, not a lot. There's still some pieces that need to be figured out. Center field's still an issue. Adam Hazley did make his return, I think, last week, and he is in the minors working his way back. This is a guy that hit 256, and I think he's got like 12 home runs, over the shortened season last year and, the year before that a little bit when he made a major league appearance. So this is a dude that when, his mindset is right, he can play center field. He takes great routes to the ball. He's got a solid arm. So I'm still high on Adam Hazley. Hopefully he can get back in the right mentality. But the one person I'm really not high on, and it's cost him a few games early on, is Aaron Nola. I know his last start, he pitched better. He needs to be better than better. He needs to be good. Eflin's had a couple shaky starts now in a row. I believe that he'll bounce back. I believe that he's on tomorrow night. So this is Friday night, and Wheeler goes and then it's Eflin. So we got Wheeler and Eflin for the 2-game weekend series down in Tampa. Wheeler's been out of his mind. He's been unbelievable on a pace that I don't think he's going to sustain. I don't think there's any way that he can. But Nola needs to be better, and I think he will be. I think with as bad as Nola's been, with the inconsistency of appearances in the lineup between Gregorius, Realmuto, and Harper, who are the best 3 hitters. I know Rhys Hoskins has been playing very well. And as bad as the leadoff spot has been, they can kind of only go up from here. They can't really get any worse. The lineup, is probably averaging 2 runs a game. over the last, 2 weeks without those three big bats. So I believe that they're going to go up from here. And let's not forget the 2008 Philadelphia Phillies were 44-41 at the All-Star break. They were 3 games above 500. Nobody thought that team was going to win the World Series, but this is why you play the games, and we're only a quarter of the way into the season, guys. There's a lot of baseball left.
So it's funny that you mentioned that they can only go up from here, and I agree with you because on my thing here it says they're on the bottom rung of the ladder. The only way to go is up.
And they're second in the division, like you said, 2.5 games back behind the Mets, who are playing like ridiculous baseball. They keep winning.
They're 6-4 in their last 10. The Mets are. Phillies are 4-6. So,
and for fun fact, people who bat their eyes at 6-4, if you go 6-4 every 10 games from the start of the season to the end, you win 96 games. So right. That's a very good pace to be at.
Yes. So like I said, you're on the bottom rung of the ladder. The only way you can go is up. Your best 3 hitters aren't in the lineup, and yet you're still finding ways to win games. You're winning. Their last 10, they went 4-6, but they're 25-26. They're literally right under 500. They're an average team with your best pitcher not performing, and your 3 of your best players have not been healthy for a substantial part of the season here. And you're second in the division. You're only 2.5 games back on the Mets, and overall, you're playing really well. No, that's not true. I lied. I do have one thing I want to bring up. The errors are absolutely freaking unforgivable. I don't know what's going on when they're in the field, but it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I think they recruited some of the Flyers players out there because they don't play defense either.
I have no idea, and it was all of a sudden the beginning of the season they were doing really well in the field.
Yeah, Alec Bohm specifically has been terrible in the field.
So they need to fix that. Once they fix that, some of these wins will start coming back anyway. In addition to that, the importance of having Adam Hazley, who is not technically a power hitting center fielder, however, he does have power, is extremely important because then you have 3 power right bats, Realmuto, Hoskins, and Bohm when he finally gets it going again. And then you'll have 3 power left bats in Harper, Didi, and Adam Hazley in the roster, not to mention that when McCutcheon's going to hit 250, 260 this year, he's going to get back up there. And he'll hit 20 home runs if he's back to himself. And then Segura is hitting 320. Segura has been a bright spot too. I'm not a huge fan of Segura. When they had the opportunity to lose him this offseason, I was hoping they would. But that's also because of how high I am on Scott Kingery, somebody who has not had the luxury to be allowed to play. Partially because
I'm gonna, and this is where we're gonna start debate wars here. I think they need to move off of Scott Kingery ASAP.
I think they need to put Scott Kingery back down in AAA and let him get at bats. Sitting on the bench is doing the kid no good.
Well, part of the issue with that is they have nobody else that can play on the bench because everybody that is the bench players are starting because the starters are hurt. But I think they need to move off Scott Kingery. He's still young. Somebody can fix him. I don't think anybody in the Phillies organization can. I was high on Kingery.
I remember a couple years, 5 years ago, I remember going into my dad's apartment and telling him, hey, look, this kid Scott Kingery is playing for Reading. I'm telling you, he'll be a big leaguer in 2 years. And I was 100% right. So I'm sticking to my guns here. He'll get it figured out. He will. And I hope it's in the Phillies organization because if it isn't, I have a feeling it'll be in the NL East and he's going to burn us for the next 2 years. And
I'm not super moved off of Moniak yet, but I wouldn't hate it. Cornelius Randolph, who's another first-round pick, and Scott Kingery. I wouldn't be shocked if any of those 3 guys were dealt at the line. I mean, like I said, I'm not super moved off Moniak yet. He's 23 years old. I know he has the first overall pick mantra hanging over his head, but that was in a particularly weak draft class where we knew going into it that Moniak was going to take some time to develop, as all high school hitters do. That's why, drafting high school players, specifically hitters, is a big risk because sometimes those guys just don't pan out. But Cornelius Randolph was also a first-round pick. He's finally coming to light a little bit. He's made some news in AAA. But I think all 3 of those guys need to move. If they're really serious about winning now, I would deal all 3 of them in a heartbeat.
If it gives us a good return, absolutely. But the way
now, I'm not
going to get a return. They haven't given Moniak an opportunity to be developed because again, what did we give him? You and I did the math on this the other day. He got 42 at bats before.
Moniak should still be up here, quite frankly, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Odubel had his incidents or whatever. They just didn't give this guy enough time, and I feel like right when he was starting to come around a little bit and starting to adjust to major league pitching is when they sent him down. So I think they treated him a little unfairly, but I guess that's what happens when you're desperate for production because, your big guys are hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. But again, if they get good return on these guys, fine. I'm okay with it. And we've talked about it several times. I'm really high on Scott Kingery, and I'm going to maintain, even if he's not a Philly, I'll maintain it.
So
just the way it's going to be.
Cleveland's needed outfield help for years, and in my dreams where I'm high as a kite, we could deal those 3 players for Shane Bieber. But in my realistic mind, it may not be a stretch to deal those 3 guys. And hell, with the way he's pitching now, throw Velasquez in there and go get a guy like Zach Plesac or something.
How have we not talked about Vivi's last 4 games? You're talking a guy who's 7 innings, 6 innings, 6+, has given up 1 earned run in his last 4 starts.
Well, that's because
we are not high on this kid right now, or haven't been on him.
That's because he listened to the podcast where I totally, pooped all over him and said I can't wait for him to be off the Phillies roster. And I hope the Phillies, whatever they do, they make the right move with Vince Velasquez in this coming offseason, because he is going to be a free agent. And he has given us, a good 4 or 5 last starts, but that does, in my opinion, that does not override, 4 or 5 years. Now, if he continues this type of pace for the rest of the year, we can talk, bringing him back. But again, if, he goes back to his old ways or even slips up slightly, shows some proof that this is not a new Vince Velasquez, but just, a phase, then they need to move off of him.
I think what they're doing with Vince is, in the past, Vince has always been worried, like, oh, I got to go deep into the game. The bullpen isn't good. I got to go deep into the game. So he's always mindful of his pitch count. And because of that, he becomes predictable. He goes down 2-0, fastball down the middle of the plate's coming. Now the bullpen is slightly reliable. He's throwing 90 to 110 pitches in 6 innings of work, which suits Vince Velasquez, because he'll take you to a 3-ball count and still throw you 2 changeups down in the zone and you're chasing it now. But prior to this, he was very predictable, because I think it was just a lot of a mindset situation. Like, our bullpen's absolutely horrendous. I have to stay out here in order to give our team the best chance to win. So I have to throw a strike here, and he was getting burned for it.
His mechanics are a little better too. He used to let his head lead his arm a little bit, and that's some super dive into pitching stuff that very few people actually pay attention to. But he used to let his head lead his arm, which causes you to get all wild and miss high or miss down in the dirt, which was very frequent events, obviously causes a lot of walks. So he's cleaned up his mechanics a little bit too. But hats off to Caleb Coughlin, new pitching coach over there in Philadelphia. But I like the way that he's pitching. I'm still not sold on him. I'm still not high on him at all, but keep it up. And, my opinion will change. I can be wrong.
Before we move on to our college sports situation, one NFL piece of news and information, I want you to give me your opinion on it. I know it's voluntary. Everybody knows they're voluntary. Aaron Rodgers does not show up to OTAs for the first time in his career. Do you still think he's a Packer?
I
don't either.
I go back and forth on this all the time. I think for the right price he's dealt, but I know I said a few weeks ago, I don't think there's any way that he's a Packer. I'm going to go back on that. For the right price, he gets dealt, but outside of that, I think he's on the Packers. Whether he shows up is going to be another thing. It's too unpredictable, because I feel like if they were to get the right offer, or if they were so intent on moving him, they would have done it at this point. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so much news about it.
Yes and no. I think because it's voluntary OTAs, they don't want to jump the gun a little bit earlier. But in a week and a half, 2 weeks, when they're mandatories and he still doesn't show up, I think that very shortly after that, there's going to be a lot of people kicking the tires. I don't know how many people are actually kicking the tires about Aaron Rodgers right now, because like you said, why would the Packers move off of him if he's going to show up? So I think in a week and a half, 2 weeks from now, when they're mandatory, it's going to be really telling whether or not he walks in the front door. And if he doesn't, I don't think it takes long at all for somebody to kick the tires and give him 2 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers. Speaking
of dudes that are out of here, Julio Jones and the Shannon Sharp issue. We'll get into the issue in a second, but Julio Jones unknowingly announced to the world, I'm sure, that he is not going to be a Falcon. So where is Julio going to play in 2022?
So a lot of people say Julio Jones is injury prone, which is ridiculous. He's missed 11 games in the last 7 seasons for injuries. Very specific statement. 11 games in the last 7 seasons for injuries. He's sat out a couple of times. He's had other issues, but he wasn't injured. So I think obviously NFL franchises and NFL GMs realize that, and they're going and they're kicking the tires on the Falcons. The problem is the Falcons, if you remember correctly, gave up 6 draft picks to go get Julio Jones. They're not going to get the same thing for a 10-year veteran, Julio Jones. They're just not going to get him. Teams that I think have a legitimate chance to go get him, Jerry Jones is dumb as hell. I think he'll try and kick the tires.
Well, I mean, as part of that conversation, he said he's not going to Dallas. I don't know if he has a no trade clause or no movement clause in his contract, whether he can actually control where he goes or not. But if he can, Dallas isn't one.
Some of the realistic locations that I have him possibly making an appearance in, Bill Belichick is always willing to go get veterans. So the Patriots is one of them. The Bills, I believe, were the latest people that I read were kicking the tires. And then like a dark horse, and it wasn't even a Philly article. It was somebody from out in California said the Eagles were kicking the tires. I don't want him personally. Look, I know what he is. I know who he is, but you just got back-to-back first-round draft pick wide receivers. Let them play. Let them play.
I agree with that stance. However, I disagree with your statement that he is not injury prone. I think, granted, he has missed 7 games in 11 years or 11 games in 7 years, whatever you said that number was. There were 2 instances last year where he started the game and then came out in the first quarter on the first drive, which does count as a game played. And another thing, he's 32 years old and these injuries keep progressively getting worse. I think he's practiced probably twice in the last 2 seasons. He's a guy known to miss practices. He does have those nagging leg injuries, you know, the hamstrings, the quads that kind of stick around forever. So I do believe that he is indeed injury prone. And I think he gets that title because it's not necessarily awful now in terms of, you know, playing games, but he's 32 years old. It's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse.
So where do you, if he's not a Falcon, where do you think he lands?
I haven't thought too much into it. San Francisco is a team that comes to mind, actually. San Francisco, Philadelphia, they always say they're in the running. I don't want them, but that doesn't mean they're not in the running. New England, I have heard New England. Buffalo would be a crazy fit. Could you imagine Stephon Diggs and Julio Jones running around up there with Josh Allen just heaving it 70 yards? Let him go get it.
And teams have to leave the safety in the box for Josh Allen to run. So
I'll probably come back to that when we do like an NFL segment. Let me get some time to sit on that. But outside of like the obvious is, you know, nothing really comes to mind. If I did have this theory and we did see some, you know, fake tweet about it, but this is actually kind of crazy. If the Packers wanted to pledge their allegiance to Aaron Rodgers, go ahead and move Jordan Love down to Atlanta. He can serve as a backup for Matt Ryan and, you know, maybe throw in a second or a third and they could go get Julio, be like, hey man, here's your weapon. And we got rid of that guy that's over your shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, the first time you had seen it 2 days before I did, but by the time I saw it, I texted you. I was like, I need you to look into this because I'm at work.
Yeah, I knew right away that it was fake because I looked into it when I saw it and I was like, dang. But I'm not. It's probably not realistic, but it's something to think about. Like, you know, what if? And it fits. It seems like it fits on paper.
On paper, everything seems like it fits on paper when you look at it the right way.
Yeah, every glass slipper looks like it fits depending on how far away you are.
Good, you can leave it.
So we're going to move into college sports. Congress introduced a bill on Thursday that would allow NCAA athletes to get paid on their name. Bill, how do you feel about that?
So paid on your name. I like the idea. However, so look, a lot of these kids who get their names on jerseys and get paid for their name are ones who already have full scholarships to the college that they're attending. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think they should try and find a way to restructure it, not getting paid on your name. I'd like it to be performance-based pay. So like if you play, let's say hypothetically, you come in as a true freshman and you play left tackle for 8 of 12 games, I think you should get a substantial amount of your college tuition knocked off, stuff like that. That's how I think it should be done.
The bill also states that the players are allowed to form unions. So I'm sure something like that would be discussed in that.
Yeah, so I would want it to be better distributed than just the kids. So like rather than your Jake Fromm's or your
Of all the college players, you picked Jake Fromm.
I don't even know why. I don't have any Georgia stuff in my house.
You
I'm
gotta
really
be kidding me, dude. Come on.
But again,
He's never even the best player on his own team.
rather than your Joe Burrows,
There we go.
like I would like to see that every player who makes the starting roster for a college team get some kind of funding. And again, even if it's just like tuition reimbursement, something like that. That's how I would have proposed the bill. But
Jake Fromm, dude, he was cut from the NFL team like a month after he was drafted for like racist tweets.
I don't even know why. I'm really sorry. I don't know why I brought Jake Fromm into this.
I'm not letting that go. Just so you know, we're now titling every episode from here on out Jake Fromm Part 1, Part 2, Part 3.
Oh man,
Jake Fromm, dude, what a guy.
I'm editing all of this out. No, I'm not going to do that. But you get what I'm saying is I would find a way for it to be better distributed across the team rather than just like the big name guys.
So it is, and from that standpoint, I agree. So it's a very unpopular opinion that college players should get paid because a lot of people believe their form of payment is scholarships. So I disagree. I believe college players should get paid, and here's why I believe that. Say somebody goes to Alabama, in-state tuition, say it's like $40,000 a year. I don't know how much it is. Say it's $40,000 a year. There's a stud player. It's a Devontae Smith, shows up at Alabama, $40,000 a year. So they give him a full ride, which, by the way, schools for each sport have a limited amount of full ride scholarships they can give. They can't just hand them out like candy. So over 4 years, if he decides to stay for 4 years, Devontae Smith will save $160,000 by not paying tuition. Maybe he has to pay for his books or whatever. That school, with Devontae Smith being there and all the talent they have around it, is going to make like quadruple what Devontae Smith is going to save, because that's just the way Alabama is. They make millions of dollars off their football program. And a lot of the big schools are like that. So I wholeheartedly believe that the schools should have to give back a little bit to those players, or, they should be compensated in some way, because these schools, these giants of, corporations are definitely benefiting off of these players far more than the players are benefiting off of scholarships. And I think it's unproportional. So I do believe that the players should be compensated by pay in some way. And
I agree.
I didn't always used to believe that until, I got into business management. And it's funny because I got into business management to take a seat in the GM role. And now I usually side with the players on almost every disagreement between, ownership and players. So I can't imagine that I'm going to have a job anytime soon in the front office, but
you just got to learn how to balance that line, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I see why both sides are doing it. Ultimately the goal of business is to make money, but at the same time, like, if players want to unionize and get themselves paid, I'm not against it at all. Like I said, I'm sure there will be conversations like what you were talking about behind the scenes, like how is it going to be distributed, but it shouldn't be distributed evenly. Like people like Devontae Smith or, Tua Tagovailoa are going to bring more money to the school than, Penei Sewell up in Oregon. Justin Herbert was bringing in the money up there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's understandable. Maybe not distributed evenly, but just distributed.
The quarterback's not getting 100% of the take and leaving everybody else to dry. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that's going to do it for us here this week, unless you got one more topic for us.
By the way, a player that I do want to shout out in baseball, I did miss this entirely because we kind of moved off of it. The AL is tied with home run leaders right now. One of them plays for the Rangers. And as soon as I say that, most of you probably would have thought it was Joey Gallo, but it is not. It is, what is his name again? It is Adolis Garcia. So he is making a lot of splashes. I think he had 3 walk-offs in the last week and a half, not home runs, just like walk-offs.
I know for sure 2 of them.
Yeah. So keep an eye on him. He's making some big moves. He jumped Ronald Acuna and Shohei Otani in the standings. He's tied with Vlad Jr. So let's keep a lookout for that, and maybe they'll start pitching around him, and maybe we'll see some of that Gallo power.
Maybe.
Yeah, outside of that, it's going to do it for me.
All right. So, guys, thanks again for listening. We love that you're tuning in and listening to us. Please subscribe. Please comment. Please like. Please go to the website and check us out. Please.
We are on Spotify. We're on Spotify and Spreaker. I know. Thank you. Shout out to Josh Hauk and Dan Lebo for really pushing me to get off my ass and finally, upload all the episodes. But it happened. So tell your friends about us. Tell anybody and their mom that we're on Spotify, because we love the listens. We love feedback. So please share with us anything. Thanks, guys, and have a safe Memorial Day weekend.
Have a good one.